Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Future Quest. Previously, Quest Team gained even more applicants in the form of a caveman and a kid he saved from being a dinosaur's lunch. Dr. Zinn, secretly controlling the organization Fear, realized off-panel that he couldn't control the approaching Omicron, and we got a flashback about a kid's giant robot pal. It was paced about as jumbled as that all sounds. Issue 5's cover is a pretty cool scene. Frankenstein Jr. heading skyward alongside the Impossibles, while it looks like some meteorites are falling around them. And anyone keenly aware of the pop stars/superheroes will note they're usually a trio, but are now joined by a young woman.
A woman? I'm scared.
The alternate cover is also cool, showing the various intersecting Hanna-Barbera characters, but drawn much more like their original animated selves. And I'm sure that whatever off-screen threat they're facing is more afraid of Xantor's slingshot. If anything, Space Ghost's beam will just soften him up. And that's depending if he's hitting it at all. How does a laser blast veer to the left? Anyway, we begin in the Sea of Japan, where a Japanese vessel encounters an unnatural phenomena. A bright light pulling them in. Their radio is cut out, so there's no calling for rescue, or takeout pizza, as we find a giant monster emerging from the vortex in the water, with green tendrils and large petal-like platelets on its head, and lightning striking all around. The anime redesign of Poison Ivy is not what I expected, but hey, kudos for taking risks. Team Quest and associates arrive at the cave paintings the Messics informed Benton about, images which may have something to do with an artifact they found. Ugg begins speaking, possibly describing what the glyphs mean, but since no one can speak time-displaced caveman, young Todd relays what his mom told him. The paintings tell of a sky god that spat out a bunch of monsters, when a stray ball of light headed for young Tor. He hit it with his club, and it changed him into the flying, monster-fighting Mightor. Mightor, the Proto-He-Man! After years of fighting and defeating these creatures, the sky god returned for the power imbued in the club, but Mightor drove it back, at the cost of his own life. His enchanted club fell into a tar pit, and was lost to the ages. And all that tar really hurt the club's resale value. Just as Jan is remembering it was her brother with her inside the ghost ship, Johnny and Todd find Fear agents rummaging through artifacts recovered from the pit. Race tells the kids to hide, but barely manages to get a shot in before a cloaked Jezebel Jade hits him in the back of the head.
Kabong!
Very good, sir.
Hey, another Hanna-Barbera reference. Kinda. The mercenary tells the agents to get the club while she contends with Agent Sumati. Meanwhile, the younger heroes are hiding in the bushes. Birdman, who was called in when Fear was discovered, tries telling Deva that something is closing in on their location, and they need to clear out. That something is a whole lot of time-displaced prehistoric animals. They're being controlled! It's all the Black Friday advertising messing with their heads. I'm telling you, the deals aren't actually better than what your stores have year-round. The kids go through various crates to find the club, and Ty asks if a tusk would work. Not sure why. Or Haji saying he thinks he knows what they're looking for. A club, you're looking for a club. We just went over this. A Fear goon summons a Triceratops to trample them, but Birdman swoops in with a saving solar blast, only to be attacked by a pterodactyl.
Cultural appropriation!
As for Haji's remark earlier, he was actually pointing to an object floating above the crates, its power likely activated by the latest vortex, and going unnoticed because none of the goons thought to look up. With his cat Snag following close behind, Ty runs up some crates, stacked like something from Ratchet and Clank, so he can grab it, and maybe help Birdman with his flying lizard problem. Once he grasps it, however, it bursts with energy, and while the cat has been changed into a saber-toothed beast, the newcomer to Quest Team has become Mightor, so exclaimed by Ugg. While it's far too easy to just call him Ty-Tor, let's remember that the original wielder of this club had the cave civilian name of Tor, so obviously this version should be called My Ty. I mean, he already looks over 21, but he still might get carded. I do like this design, a nice balance of yellow and green, not quite modern, but not quite prehistory either. Though I wonder if they wanted to evoke Superman in some way, what with that 5-sided shape on his shirt. Anyway, on to the other half of the issue, where 3 of the most dangerous criminals have teamed up to commit supercrime. So many mattresses are going to have their tags ripped off. It's going to be pandemonium.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Smogula, Bubbler, and Puzzler attacking just as the Impossibles are being told about their team-up by Big D.
Phrasing?
So after some cheesy dialogue, Coil-Man, Multi-Man, and Fluid Man
Phrasing.
go on the offensive. They're bad at math and need a bath. Rally ho! Hey, we're sensitive about both those things. Schools didn't know how to teach us, and we have allergies to most body soaps. Why else do you think the 3 of us are teaming up with each other? On the next page, we find this was all a scene for a TV show, which is taking a break until later in the afternoon. The actor playing Smogula is lamenting spending his time getting ready for green screen work involving a mocap suit, and wants to know how the 3 hero actors do their stunts and effects. They claim it's all really expensive, and they're contractually bound to keep it secret. I don't suggest looking into it, like the last 2 Smogulas. Hint, hint. Changing into their civvies, the 3 discuss a call from a Rob Boss, possibly a play on Bob Ross, though here it's a music producer that wants to record them next month. Either he's an easygoing guy that doesn't believe in mistakes and lets even slip-ups onto his albums, or he's a merciless taskmaster that hates painting and afros. The 3 contemplate this as their big break, since each year part of their audience outgrows and turns on them. When I was a naive teenager, I thought I had outgrown Weird Al. Hey, it was a mistake and I admit it, come on! They're met with an interviewer from a music news outlet, Esme Santos. This surprises them, and the real Big D,
Hey, phrasing!
told them not to do live interviews. But she, meaning their real boss is a lady, hasn't called in weeks, hasn't put them in the field, and this could be their chance to be taken seriously as musicians. Liquid Guy may have a point. There's only so long that they can say that Secret Squirrel poster and Morocco mole shirt are ironic. Esme exposits that the 3 were child actors on an HB series, formed a band in their teens, and eventually got their own show where they performed music and solved mysteries. They tried to match ratings with similarly premised Josie and the Pussycats, but they can't quite compete with 3 women in legless, form-fitting cat outfits. Who can say why? However, Miss Santos goes on, they were doing a gig on a cruise ship in the Bahamas when power went out and people started falling ill. This man passed out. Feel strange. Stop playing, you monsters. Your music is literally killing us. Fluid Band signals the others to keep mum on the matter, and act surprised when Esme says that it turned out Fear had an underwater base that exploded. Underwater base? Explosion? Did Fear commandeer C-Lab 2021?
I'm helping you!
The group was out of commission and incommunicado for a month, which they say was the network making sure they recovered okay. They say they spent their quarantine reading comics, like then-recent Scooby Apocalypse. Good old subtle self-promotion from DC there. And that gave them the idea to change their show characters into superheroes. Esme leans in, saying that if these strange phenomena had altered their biology, working their powers into their stage personas would be the perfect way to keep them secret. I don't know, between secrecy on set, people asking questions, and any number of ways that could be exposed, it actually sounds like a really dumb idea, but hey, I could be overthinking it. Oh, hey now, that sounds like some of the fan fiction from our forum. Which we've had to specify has to be child appropriate, because some people have really disturbing ideas of what we're like off-screen. Where would we even get 500 gallons of mayo, an industrial steamroller, and 50 rabid mongooses? She asks who'd want to keep such a secret, you know, besides the people with the powers, for privacy's sake or something wacky like that. They wonder if she's a user on their message board called Impossagirl, but she denies it.
I would just like to float an idea. Like maybe someone else on that ship was affected like you.
And the bench the actor-musicians are on begins lifting off the floor. Whoa! Whoa! That was incredible! So, that's someone else you mentioned. Who do you think it is? They all go behind the studio to talk privately, since the only one there that knows their secret is the director. They recall being taken by chopper to a hospital ship by hazmat workers, who hoped they got the only irradiated ones, while someone with wings flew overhead. The one in charge was Deva Sumati, whose reference in the show, Big D, was kinda meant as a joke. On top of letting them form their costumes at will, apparently their powers manifested based on subconscious inclinations. Coil-Man loved trampolines, Multi-Man spent a lot of time in the mirror, and Fluid-Man,
Yeah! I'm falling apart!
he's in a constant state of mental fragility resulting in a pool of unstable emotions. Deva, who really doesn't like the nickname Big D, worked out an arrangement with the studio for the new premise of their show, until they're ready for mission work. Suddenly, Esme is in her own suit.
You say the C stands for cobalt?
No, she didn't. Unless this is some weird, awkward time skip or something. Anyway, her abilities manifested months later, when equipment she approached would malfunction and she started seeing magnetic fields just in the right light. Eventually, she managed to move the waves to affect most metals, and with some study, made her suit capable of directing her own magnetic poles to essentially fly. A stranger appears, having followed Cobalt's EM signal, and the gang suit up. He says their power wasn't meant for them, and if it can't belong to his bosses, they'll be forced to join Fear. Huh. Looks like Clayface has been going work for hire outside Gotham these days. 2 stories per issue feels like it kinda stops one rather suddenly, but on the other hand, that could happen anyway if they tried intercutting the two, and possibly making it feel more janky. But they were both paced fine, if with a couple minor hiccups. And, fun fact, the Impossibles were originally going to be called The Incredibles, which makes you wonder what a different team of supers would have been called if Hanna-Barbera hadn't changed it. Maybe the Parr family still would have used the name, but it would have resulted in a more complicated legal thing like an animation equivalent of the whole Captain Marvel dispute. On to issue 6, its cover featuring Johnny, Haji, Bandit, and the new Mitor in the center of some maelstrom, looking at the reader. Almost like they're daring you to pick it up off the shelves. The alternate is different. A bit cheerier, with Haji and Bandit joined by Birdman and Ghost Team, all looking a lot more cartoony. More so than their original designs, almost like they're about to do a crossover with Tom and Jerry in another direct-to-video movie. Which wouldn't be that outlandish. Those two have crossed over with Sherlock Holmes, Willy Wonka, and the Wizard of Oz. Having transformed like Billy Batson, Ty is surprisingly chill about it. Excited, in fact. You'd think he'd be a bit more weirded out, but maybe being around the Quest family braced him for this. Or maybe he just always wanted to be a superhero. In any event, he goes to give Birdman an assist and tells Battle Snag to help the others. Instead, he goes to lie down in the sun for a few hours. He is still a cat after all. Seriously, he's really rolling the dice that his pet suddenly understands his commands to the capacity he wants. Benton and Deva are being chased by a mastodon, the young Todd wanting to help, but not knowing what to do as he clings to Ugg's back. The caveman has a cave plan, leaping onto a tree that bends like rubber, then launches them toward the beast.
This reminds me of that fat man I used to ride to work.
I guess, despite the more grounded tone of previous issues, they're not above some cartoon physics in this book. Birdman has been knocked out in his fight with the pterodactyl, but fortunately the new Mitor breaks him free, then breaks his fall. And out of nowhere, Todd joins Haji and Johnny as they watch their new pal in action. Well, if they're gonna make trees bend like elastic, I suppose Ugg could have called time out with the mammoth in order to let the lad off. The kids, and their little dog too, are then surprised by a dinosaur.
A velociraptor! Actually, it's a Deinonychus. Everyone thinks they're velociraptors because of the movies.
Thanks, Todd. Good to know. In an appreciation of getting his genus correct, the Deinonychus will eat you last. Snag leaps in for the rescue, and the kids notice how intense it's getting off-panel and how the big cat may be in danger, and it's heavily implied that Snag impales the dino off-panel. Because, saber-tooth. Mitor lands long enough to leave the unconscious Birdman with his non-powered pals, when Haji notices they've lost Jan. She's gone stealth to conk a fear goon on the head with a rock, ceasing his control over the stampeding Wooly. Meanwhile, Space Ghost is fighting Omnicron in limbo, valiantly declaring he'll finish this fight to honor his fallen Space Force comrades. I am the living will of all those heroes. The antique china is going to Cousin Linda, and the orchard is going to Uncle Chet. Your inheritance is a whoopins! The The monster begins disintegrating and Ghost thinks he's finally won, except when he sees a chunk of it head towards a vortex. He's so exhausted he almost didn't see it, and has to follow it to the other side, struggling to stay awake. I really shouldn't have taken all that Ambien before the fight. And I really shouldn't have chased it down with warm milk while listening to lullabies and watching that video of people yawning. Race wakes up with a nasty headache and sees that some stuff has happened during his unexpected nap. Ugg swings by to give him a lift, having taken control of the mammoth.
Ugg start own rideshare company. Take people around town on woolly mammoth. Ugg make profit because mammoth work for peanuts. Hey, Ugg am caveman. What kind joke you expect?
Rounds over. You go.
Deva puts the Impossibles on hold while taking out a fear goon and sees the new player Mytor helping out. While Quest examines a control apparatus, he's hit with a sedative and taken captive by Jezebel Jade, who gives Agent Sumati some accolades for acquiring the power source before Fear could. Race grabs onto Jade's leg, not letting go until she releases the duck, but Zing calls from her radio, saying that he sent a dinosaur after the kids, with a bomb strapped to it. An actual velociraptor beelines for Johnny and the others, but Burbank grabs the explosive, generates his wings again, and throws it with all his solar-powered might so it explodes a safe distance away. I mean, the shockwave should still be dangerous, but fiction rarely bothers with that detail anyway. Everyone regroups, and if the nabbed Dr. Quest wasn't problem enough, Sumati is apparently being told that vortexes are opening up all over the world. In a surprise twist, these portals are actually part of Amazon's new instant delivery system, though they still don't knock on the door when they drop it off, nor do they like it when their employees take bathroom breaks. Next up is part 2 of the Impossibles story, codename Cobalt, where the menacing villain has apparently grown in size and threatens the team to join Fear or die.
He was a regular guy a second ago.
Not that you could tell. He was in a trench coat and hat, and you could barely see him before he showed himself. Anyway, Multi-Man occupies the enemy with duplicates that don't seem to mind being pulverized. However, the main guy elaborates. They're just copies made of particulates. Dust!
Dust in the wind.
Coil-Man tries calling Big D, and the conversation only indicates that this is happening at the same time as Quest Team's adventure, but also tips off their foe to their hiding spot. He tells them that only Fear understands what the Impossibles have become and can help them, as he partially reveals his human form. He was a volunteer for the Bio-Ally procedure that had been in development for years in their undersea base, Deep Fear, in the Bahamas. Using energy converted from the Earth's core, the idea was to alter the cells of a small army so they could shapeshift, survive in space, resist conventional weapons, or, like our narrator, become malleable carbon. However, Agent Sumati infiltrated the base and sabotaged them, and lectured about how they were beneath a shipping route and risking innocence, while she chops a guy in the face. However, she was too late to stop the procedure, just as the cruise ship carrying the Impossibles passed over them. While several of Carbon Guy's fellow test subjects didn't survive, the band, and the journalist newcomer, received the right dose of radiation so they can transform without agonizing pain.
Oh, it's more like a tingle, I'd call it.
The tingling means it's working. Hey, maybe that's why I don't have dandruff anymore. Cobalt makes them an escape route, and they end up on a set for an upcoming episode, where they encounter their director Fiona and writer Mark. Since Deva is unavailable, they ask them what to do, framing it as the premise of an episode. How do they fight a living carbon monster while having help from someone that controls magnetic waves?
You're talking plot. What's the villain's motivation?
He's kinda crazy and wants us to work for an evil organization.
Yes, but how evil?
More evil than a politician, but not as evil as a slumlord that kicks out old ladies of their apartment, then embezzles money intended for sick children. The mutated Fear Goon smashes his way inside, so time is something of a factor and they need ideas. Mark rough drafts the idea of Multi-Man making a ladder of clones up to the scaffolding over the flying saucer prop and continuing to duplicate until the structure breaks. This all plays out, and the foe hits the ground, landing on the saucer, and that's where Cobalt comes in, alternating the magnetic fields in the metal so it heats up. Fluid Man supercools the enemy, and Coil pulls really far back and fires, shattering the threat with a mighty rally-ho. It's a good thing the bad guy went exactly according to the improvised script, while somehow hearing absolutely none of it. And apparently there were other crew members around, like Grips that Fiona tells to store the carbon fragments of the defeated but still alive foe, and at least one cameraman she hopes got some footage of the fight. So how secret is their secret again? Cobalt wants to meet Deva, and the best way for that to happen is if she officially joins the Impossibles. She admits to lying about being a music journalist, but the guys think that just makes her all the more fit to be part of the spy game for Internation. And the issue ends with the revelation that she can also play the drums, while Fiona asks Carbon Villain Guy, now reduced to just his face, if he works for scale. Now would be a great time for him to update his headshots. While both stories are good, breaking them up does feel like a mixed bag. It allows for some dramatic closers like Ty becoming Mytor or the appearance of unnamed Feargoon with powers. It does hurt the pacing a little bit. Alternatively, they could have had a single issue devoted to the Impossibles that kinda breaks from the main story for a time. I'm not saying it would have been the best option, but maybe it would have helped both stories flow better. And while things started out with a more grounded tone, it has walked that back a bit, a little with Ugg's tree-based flight, and definitely with the Impossibles apparently having a monster fight in front of an entire studio crew with no questions raised from the majority that aren't aware they actually have powers. I understand it gets passed off as a super secret special effects gimmick, but willing suspension of disbelief can only go so far. Still, we got some good action, some new characters that seem to be integrating well, and the Impossible story was, at the very least, fun. Tune in next week to see if we get a side story about Blip's quest for frozen bananas, or the Herculoids getting a spa day. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, I got issues.